Hey everyone, and on today's episode, we're going to look at really 5 things that I really want for the future of the James Bond franchise in general. These 5 important things that I feel are really important to me that I desperately want to see in the franchise. And that video is starting in 3, 2, 1. I think if you were to ask any Bond fan out there, and I literally do mean any Bond fan out there, everyone would have their own individual list of like those requirements or those things they desperately want in a James Bond film, heck, even in an entire franchise. I can be from people wanting more action, to more gadgets, to more funny lines. There are so many different things that many people want in the Bond franchise, and for me, I'm no different. Going forward into Bond 26 and beyond, there are a couple of things that I really want to see in the Bond franchise, not only in the films but outside the franchise as well. These really important things to me that are that's how I can best describe them. They are important to me. They mean a lot to me. I care about them and I like seeing them within the Bond franchise and the whole Bond narrative in general. So that's what I thought I could do today. If you want, I'm going to give you my list of basically 5 most important things that I want to see in the James Bond franchise going forward. And can I take this moment to ask everybody to give us a subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,100 subscribers before the end of the year, so if you can help us, that would be absolutely amazing. Please click on the subscribe button. And before, better or not, let's get into my first big thing that I want to see in the future of the Bond franchise. So the first thing is very much, I think, like many people will be expecting with Bond 26, but it is a complete fresh take. Now what I mean by that is normally within the Bond franchise, we generally have something that's maybe a bit more darker and grounded and gritty, if you will, and eventually it lightens itself up and eventually it goes into a bit more lightheartedness, a bit more fun, a bit more over the top. And again, both those versions, in my opinion, are great. They all have their moments, they all fit within the Bond franchise, and I do love it. But essentially, it's gone from maybe dark and gritty to more light-hearted, to dark and gritty, to being a bit of a combo, and then going a bit more light-hearted again, then going dark and gritty, and now it's finally coming to maybe a bit more lighter. And for me, that's all well and good. But what I'd really like to see in the franchise is something truly, completely new. Now, when I say completely new, I don't mean it's going to be something completely 180 to what James Bond is. Let's be fair. But if someone could come in and truly give some potential new, fresh take, a whole new perspective on the Ian Fleming James Bond novels and the character and bring that into the films, I would get really, really excited for that. I keep saying on this channel, and I always probably never will stop, but I've always loved the idea of taking Bond back in time, back to the 1960s. I feel so many great, cool things could happen with that. You could tell such brand new stories that you couldn't really tell if you're taking the modern day. You lose the issue with constant technology updates, maybe potentially spoiling the things. But going back in time, doing something radical and going back to the 1960s, that could be a fresh new take and direction. I think as Bond fans, we know the tropes. We know that it goes from darker to light and then back to dark, back to light. It always constantly goes up in that zigzag. So for me, if you can give potentially a fresh, complete new take and a new perspective on the franchise, for me, you have already scored massive brownie points going forward in the future of the Bond franchise. So the next thing for me would definitely be less time in between the films. Now I think this is again one universally all Bond fans want, and I don't think we'll ever go back to Bond film every 2 years. But if we could get to a stage where we're releasing a Bond film every 3 years, I would be so happy with that, and I think that would be absolutely amazing. I do like the fact that a film comes out, there's a bit of time in between the next film where the producers do have a little bit of breathing space and proper time to really develop the next one instead of worrying about it coming the year after next. I think 3 years would be absolutely great. One of the big issues I have with the Daniel Craig era, and it's nothing on the producers or Daniel Craig himself, but the fact of the matter is there was extremely long gaps in between the Craig films. We're talking about 4 years, we're talking potentially 6 years. I know the pandemic, and there was the bankruptcy issues with MGM. There were so many issues going through the Craig era. He probably would have had his 5 films a lot quicker. Maybe he might even done more. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, one of the things I really, really want for the next era and going forward in the Bond franchise is a regular release of maybe 3 years there is a new Bond film. If we can get a regular thing like that, I think it will not only help the franchise, it will keep it more in the public consciousness. I think fans will be much more gearing up for it and more ready for it. And as just a Bond fan, I won't have to constantly worry about when is the next film going out, how long is it going to be. They say it's this day, but will they really keep to this date? There's so many variables with it now. So for me, yeah, a massive big thing would be a constant, potentially 3-year release date for Bond films. Next thing on the list is something maybe some of you would think it's not that important. Me, I sort of slightly am wanting this, but I'll explain in more detail. But essentially is a director directing multiple films in the franchise. For me, I remember the days when it was, it was the Terence Young Bond films, it was the Guy Hamilton Bond films, it was the John Glenn Bond films, it was Lewis Gilbert Bond film. They sometimes did 5, maybe 3, 2 at a time, and I sort of liked that, and I sort of got that again with Skyfall and Spectre. Yes, one film was severely better than the other. That's, my subjective opinion. But for me, I know a lot of people say we like new directors coming in with fresh takes, but I do like the idea of a director coming in to do potentially 2 or maybe even 3 Bond films at a time, really stamping out his own, or her own in this case, sort of, own Bond tenure of directing. I really think that's actually quite intriguing, and just something I really feel is missing from the Bond franchise, that also continuity between directors. There's a lot of rumours going about at the moment that Christopher Nolan might be directing Bond 26, and even hearing on the rumours that he actually might be coyed into doing a potential trilogy of James Bond movies. And for me, that just gets my excitement even higher. The idea that Christopher Nolan couldn't just be doing 1 Bond film, but potentially doing 3 Bond films. That to me is just super exciting. And overall for me, if you look at Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, compared to that, Skyfall and Spectre, I do like there is a bit more sort of continuity with the director side of things than there was maybe potentially between those films. So yeah, something I hope we do get in the future of the Bond franchise is when a director goes on to do a Bond film, it doesn't just one and go, they direct potentially multiple Bond films. I think it would be really good for the franchise. The next thing is a bit of a rant, if I'm absolutely honest, but just bear with me here, but I want the future of the Bond franchise to honour the tropes. One of the things I really, really did not like about the Craig era of Bond films is I understood that they wanted to do the tropes, but they wanted to reinvent them and reintroduce them, okay, but as far as I'm concerned, they far too many times mess with them. I mean, you only need to look at the gun barrels. In Casino Royale, it worked. That was fair enough, but Quantum and Skyfall, those gun barrel sequences shouldn't have been at the end. And then we finally got something a bit more like what I was expecting in Spectre, but then they put like the dead or alive, which to me just ruined it a bit. And No Time to Die's gun barrel I thought was okay. And all throughout those films, it's like, they were sort of like half embarrassed by the tropes, half trying to like wheel them in a more special way. You don't need to. It's part of the fabric of Bond. We want him to hear Bond, James Bond, vodka martini, shaken not stirred, some dark witty comments at the end or sort of when you've killed somebody. That's what we do like. And for me, I want, going forward in the future, people not to run away from these tropes. If anything, embrace them and enjoy them and make sure that they're in the film. To me, it's just so important that the films do that. As I mentioned, overall, I'd rather have the tropes and being very stereotypical, which gives me a buzz, gives me a kick, gives me a real sense of pride and joy in the franchise, than someone trying to mess with them all the time. So yeah, definitely going forward, whatever you're going to do next, Eon, honour the tropes and give us the things that we want and stop trying to mess with them, because it's not making you look good. I think the last thing I'm going to mention here, and again, it's a slight rant, so I do apologise, but I'm going to try and be brief and to the point here, is to any future composer that we have. By the way, fingers crossed for Hans Zimmer returning again after that amazing album he did for No Time to Die. It was such an amazing score. But composers, don't be afraid to use the Bond theme. You wouldn't have an Mission Impossible film without the MI theme. You wouldn't have like a Pink Panther movie or a Superman movie without their iconic themes. So why is it recently in the Bond series, it's almost like, oh, we could use the Bond theme, but we're not. The Bond theme is one of the greatest pieces of music ever. You can adapt it, you can change it, speed it up, slow it down, give it different rhythm, give it different genres. It's a fantastic piece of music. It's amazing. It gets the blood pumping. And it's James Bond's theme. Use it. Stop trying to hide it or just maybe use little teeny bits of it. I love the Bond theme. Bond fans love the Bond theme. The general audience love the Bond theme. It goes through our heads when we know we're watching a Bond film. So use it, please. Use it where it's needed. Let it play bombastically, loud and proud. Please, I beg you, use the Bond theme. So everyone, that is really my main 5 things that I want to see going forward in the future of the Bond franchise. I'm sorry for the little rants at the end, but I just felt it was very important. But I want to know, everyone, what are your thoughts on this? What are your top 5 things that you want to see going forward in the Bond franchise? I want to know. Comment down below and tell me what you think. As always, everyone, my name's Henry Stevens and I'm the Bond Geek. Goodbye.